What's up, everybody? Just wanted to give you guys a little intro here, show you what the Barnes & Noble's Classics look like on the bookshelf. We're going to be doing a little deep dive on the Barnes & Noble's Classics collection that, I've acquired so far. And this really gives you a sense of just how beautiful they look on the shelf. So many different beautiful colors. And we're going to take them all off the bookshelf and do a little life update. So I hope you guys will enjoy this. Make sure you guys like this video. Please share this video and please subscribe and follow me on Instagram at Andrew Marlowe Artist Official. Man, that light is so bright I had to turn it down just a little bit. So we are back for another video. I apologize for the delay in uploads. We did just do that Dostoevsky Notes from the Underground stream about 8 or 9 days ago, so you guys can go into the live section, the live playlist on my channel, and check that out for further information on that. And today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the beautiful Barnes & Noble's Classics edition that I've collected over the last maybe year or so. Just a little quick life update. I've been reading a ton of books, and we will be back to, well, I haven't really been reading a ton of books. Been reading a lot, but I haven't really managed to get through a whole lot of them. But as soon as we get through these books that we're currently reading, we'll have some more book analysis, book reviews up for you guys. And we did throw in Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, into our summer reading list. This is just something real great to kind of unwind with at the end of the night, or perhaps in the morning when you're having your morning coffee or something. Really great Stoic, ancient Japanese or Chinese poetry, sort of philosophy. Really great stuff in here. Super easy read. We'll probably be done with this relatively soon, but Lao Tzu is obviously something that you can go back to again, time and time again, to get nourishment from. A little update on East of Eden. We are on page 353, so we're definitely getting through it. Only got about maybe 30% of the book left. Super compelling, super interesting. Probably one of the best novels I've actually ever read. Which is kind of surprising because I was kind of resistant to getting back into Steinbeck, but he's actually quite amazing as far as East of Eden is concerned. And as soon as this is done, I'm planning on doing a live stream. We'll be, picking apart and unpacking, analyzing John Steinbeck in the context of the Book of Genesis and all that good stuff. Last but not least, as far as the current reads, we're getting through Conquest and Cultures. Really great historical history book by Thomas Sowell. We're on page 126. So we've knocked out a good little chunk of Conquest and Cultures. Super interesting. I'm not going to get too much into the current reads, but we are going to get into my beautiful Barnes & Noble's Classics collection. I haven't really done any book hauls lately. I have gotten some new books, but I don't want the channel to be stuffed with constant book hauls. But I've actually never done a collection video, so this is going to be the first part in the series of different, book editions and different collections of books, different publishers. After we're done with the Barnes & Noble's Classics edition, we'll probably move on to the Penguin Classics collection, and then the Oxford, and then so on and so forth. So this is the second stack of Barnes & Noble's Classics. And then I hope these aren't going to fall. And then we have the final stack right here. So I collect them, or I display them from largest to small. That really makes sense. And what's interesting about the Barnes & Noble's Classics edition is that they come in different types. You've got the regular paperbacks that you probably used to see at Barnes & Noble's, all that good stuff. Just found this really awesome, beautiful copy of Anna Karenina. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But they also have these beautiful hardcover editions. These are like collector's editions with proliferated sort of, outward-facing book spines there. Really great, beautiful hardcovers. Some of the newer editions look a little bit more like this. So these are really great. And these are the first two that I put on my shelf. I put them right there, and then the rest of them kind of follow suit, and they're absolutely beautiful. Now, what's interesting about the Barnes & Noble's Classics edition is that they tend to be older translations. Like, for example, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This one happens to be the Constance Garnett translation, which is sort of, in recent times kind of fell out of favor, but I would love to read. Actually haven't even read Anna Karenina in anybody's translation, but I did want to get this into the collection, just because it's so beautiful. I mean, just look at that purple, look at that great book cover. And it looks a little bit thicker than the Oxford Classic edition that I have, which is a more modern translation. But what's interesting about Constance Garnett is that she was the first one to really translate Leo Tolstoy. She does have some critics that have sort of, she's been sort of improved upon. Her translations are sort of considered antiquated, probably a little bit outdated. But for first-time Tolstoy readers, or perhaps just for a more, original translation, you'll go to Constance Garnett. So I am looking forward to maybe reading the Constance Garnett collection someday. I might start with the other translation that we have because it's a little more modern. But let's just kind of get into this stack of beautiful Barnes & Noble's classics. I'm going to do my best to keep these in order so that we can, just keep everything organized. So I did show you guys briefly the hardcover ones, but up first we have John Milton's Paradise Lost. Now John Milton is a epic poet that, I think he might have written some novels as well that I have not read yet. I haven't read any John Milton, but I am definitely planning on getting our eyes and ears and fingers and noses into Paradise Lost at some point. This seems like a decent translation. It's just a beautiful edition. So we do have that. And I really just like the way that they have Renaissance and medieval and Baroque and sort of, 17th, 18th century art on their book covers. Just really fits. Up next we have D.H. Lawrence, Lady Chatterley's Lover. Now I've shown most of these, the majority of these in my book hauls, but most of these will probably be pretty fresh to you guys. Camera's a little high here. Just gonna scrunch it down just a wee bit. So this is a beautiful edition of Lady Chatterley's Lover. I think I only have 2 D.H. Lawrence novels. The other one being Sons and Lovers, which is actually in the Barnes & Noble's Classics edition, which is pretty great. So we'll get into that. Up next, we have Bulfinch's Mythology, sort of organized by Thomas Bulfinch, obviously. This covers everything from, the Epic of Gilgamesh to King Arthur to the ancient Norwegian stuff. It's got just all kinds of stuff in it. Bacchus, the sea monster. It's got a little bit of Indian and Arabic sort of philosophy, mythology and stuff like that in here. Tristan and Isolde, King Arthur, all that stuff. So eventually I will be getting my eyes into Bulfinch's Mythology. It's kind of more of like I think it kind of functions as more of a reference book, but, I would like to just kind of pick it apart and, get a little bit more familiar with, mythology, philosophy, and ancient, medieval, and Greek, Mesopotamian history, all that good stuff. So up next, probably the next biggest Barnes & Noble's classic book that we have is definitely Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is just a really beautiful pink feminine one to have in your collection. And when we towards the end of the summer into this the fall, in the winter, we're going to be reading all female authors to try to get some female writers, under our belt. And we will probably be starting with this maybe because I do want to read it. It's just such a beautiful copy. And it's an epic novel. It's like almost 700 pages. So that's going to be really interesting to get into when the time comes. I just love how they're all kind of color coded. I'm not sure if they're actually coded per se, but obviously with Elizabeth Gaskell, Wives and Daughters, the pink just really kind of suits it. So anyway, moving on to the next biggest one, definitely the thickest Barnes & Noble's classic novel that we have is this beautiful edition of Bleak House by Charles Dickens. I have not read this yet. I haven't read any Charles Dickens, but I'm planning on reading A Christmas Carol next Christmas, and perhaps after that or sometime before that, maybe we will start implementing some other Charles Dickens. Now, I will say for an author like like Charles Dickens, or somebody like Anthony Trollope, it can be kind of sort of intimidating because they were so prolific. They wrote like over 30 or 40 novels, at least, Charles Dickens did. So it's a little hard to find that entry novel. I'm not really sure which entry novel is going to be the best for me. but I probably will knock out Bleak House at some point because it's almost like the size of War and Peace, not quite. But I just love the challenge of a real thick novel like that, so we'll be getting into that at some point. Up next, we have this beautiful copy of Anna Karenina that we talked about briefly in the beginning. This is the Constance Garnett edition. Anna Karenina is not quite as daunting as War and Peace, but it's supposed to be one of Tolstoy's greatest novels, if not one of the greatest novels ever written from Russian literature, right? So we'll definitely be getting into the, Anna Karenina at some point. Up next, we have Nana by Emile Zola. Obviously, this one's a completely different color. I love how they're just all different colors. I'm not sure if they ever repeat the same colors. I think they probably do at some point. But there's just so many beautiful shades of different colors. Just beautiful artwork they have featured on the covers. I haven't read any Emile Zola. I believe he's a French writer. This translation is Burton Roscoe. So I think most of these translations tend to be older. The Barnes & Noble's classics were published probably in the 80s and 90s. Maybe probably even after that, 2000s, before sort of the other translations kind of started coming to light. Just trying to figure out how I'm going to keep these all organized. Up next, we have Gustave Flaubert, Madame Bovary. Look at that beautiful light pink. It's almost like a white. Really light pink, really light purple. So I haven't read any. Actually, I did read Madame Bovary. I'm sorry, back in high school. So this is written by a male writer, but it is about a female protagonist. And that's another avenue to go down. We've been reading a lot of masculine writers like Thomas Wolfe, Leo Tolstoy. I would consider him a masculine writer, but obviously he has, very strong female main characters, protagonists. We've read Bukowski, we've read Shakespeare, and he's kind of all over the board, but I would say in general, he's more of a masculine writer. And I think throughout the history of literature and storytelling, men just do it best. It's not through any fault of the women's, but traditionally, the ancient societies, men were kind of the orators, the storytellers. Not that women weren't, but it's kind of like Mel Gibson says, you don't find a lot of really good women that can tell jokes as well as men do. Not that there's not any, but male comedians, for example, just make for better comedians than women do, in my opinion. And that kind of goes the same with writing. There's a certain authoritative masculine struggle that you get with a male writer that you don't necessarily get with a female writer. But maybe as we go into our cycle of female authors and female characters, we will change our perspective. I sure hope we will. So that's Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. Up next, we have Moby Dick, this beautiful dark color that really fits with sort of the theme of the ocean and all that good stuff. Haven't read Herman Melville at all, but we're planning to read Moby Dick maybe next winter or something. We'll kind of see when we can fit it in. There's really so many books that I want to kind of start implementing, but I am trying to focus on the summer reading list. So that's Herman Melville by Moby Dick. Let me know if you've read any of these, editions. Now, obviously, a lot of the English novels, like Moby Dick, I'm not sure if he's English as far as his heritage goes, but published in English. There's probably not a whole lot of issues with translators. This doesn't even have a translator. I'm sure maybe it's been updated or maybe revised or something. But that's a good thing about reading English books, is that you don't have to worry about things becoming lost in translation. So up next we have Henry James, The Wings and the Dove. Haven't read any Henry James, I don't think, at all. I love this really beautiful dark turquoise, greenish, almost turquoise blue. So The Wings of the Dove, this is also about a female protagonist. So we have a lot of male writers that write extensively about women. So that's another sort of genre that you can explore. That's sort of different than somebody like Ernest Hemingway that's kind of writing first person about himself, or Thomas Wolfe writing first person about himself. There's so many different types of authors you can read. Up next, we have Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, another Henry James novel. Beautiful light blue. Just look at that cover. Beautiful impressionist painting. Beautiful spine. And I haven't, obviously, I haven't read hardly any of these Barnes and Noble's Classics edition. That's not purposely, but I think part of me is like they're so beautiful. I haven't really cracked them open yet, but I'm trying to get through some other stuff. But eventually, we are going to really devour these Barnes and Noble's Classics, and they're relatively cheap, so I'm not really afraid to mark them up and sort of annotate and dog ear as I once was. But this is another, male writer that focused on a female protagonist, so that's something we can explore. We could make a video about male writers that focus on male protagonists, and we could make another video about male writers that focus on female protagonists, and then obviously we can write about women writers that write about women, but also women writers that write about men. That's also a thing too. So we have that. Up next, we have Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence, and we mentioned I love this beautiful dark purple. It's almost like the Anna Karenina purple. I think it might be the exact same color, yeah? Maybe not quite, but definitely close. So yes, they do repeat their covers, their colors rather, but obviously the picture in the middle really just makes it look like an entirely different color almost. This one's a little more subdued, and this one almost brightens the purple because you got all this yellow. This is a portrait by Vincent van Gogh. So super cool stuff. I just really love the design element of, Barnes & Noble's Classics. It's something to keep in mind for my own novel when it's ready to be published. Up next, we have this beautiful light purple of Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. I can't wait to get into The Jungle Book. It's just kind of off my radar at the moment, but we will be getting into all of these books at some point. I promise. If you guys, subscribe and stay with me on this journey for another couple of years, we will probably have most of my collection knocked out, hopefully. Excuse me. Up next, we have this beautiful sort of dark blue, light blue edition of Jane Austen, Sense and Sensibility. Haven't read any Jane Austen, regrettably, but we will eventually get into Jane Austen. This probably will be on our tier of female authors writing about women. That's got a cute little snapshot of the painting up there, and just they pick the best paintings. They just really sum up the vibe of a lot of these authors. So let me know what your comments and thoughts are about Jane Austen. She's got some critics, but I'm just really enjoying some of these newer, barely touched, barely read copies. Whoever collected these, the majority of these that I bought, they do have a collector's quality to them. They're just so beautiful, but I'm definitely going to be kind of, destroying them, so to speak, once we start annotating and all that stuff. But we'll still take good care of them. Up next, we have, let's start from the bottom. That way we don't get the stack mixed up. You guys heard me talk about this. I'll try to show all three of these. That way we don't have to separate them. We got Dante Alighieri's Alighieri, the Purgatory, or what's it called? What's his cycle called? The Divine Comedy. Yeah, slipped my mind. So this is sort of like Renaissance mythology that I do plan on reading at some point. I've already sort of annotated the first book. So these are just beautiful altogether. Look at the color choices they made there, really just great. So eventually we will be getting into the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. I think he's sort of like a proto sort of John Milton type or something like that. Really epic sort of mythological poetry prose. So we'll get into that at some point. Up next, we have Moll Flanders, which I did read a little bit of annotations in there. I didn't mark the book up or anything, but I probably will once we go back and do a rereading. Daniel Defoe, Moll Flanders. So regrettably, this is the only, I shouldn't say it's the only Barnes & Noble's Classic book that I've read, because obviously I've read some in the past, like the D.H. Lawrence and maybe the Madame Bovary. But in terms of recent acquisitions, I haven't really cracked any of these Barnes & Noble's Classics except for the Moll Flanders, which was a really good read. And now that I've been away from Moll Flanders for almost 5 or 6 months, I definitely appreciate it more now than I did when I first finished it, and I would really enjoy doing a rereading of that. Up next, we have another Thomas Hardy, The Mayor of Casterbridge. And when you're collecting books too, this is a dilemma that you will face, is it's hard to come upon all the same books by one author, all in the same series or the same publisher or the same edition, right? You kind of buy, you kind of buy them sporadically, and they're all from different pressings and different editions. But if you can find them all in these same editions or the same publisher, you know, you can have that collector's value. But something you'll face is your book collection will start to get separated, because you'll want to keep, you know, for example, I have Thomas Hardy in the Barnes and Nobles, but I also have Thomas Hardy in some really beautiful hardcover editions like this. I'm not going to pull it out completely, but you guys have seen these in the background. Just bumped my elbow. Damn. So we have, you know, as a book collector, you know, that's something you can explore, is sort of getting all the same pressings of all the author's books that you love. That's just a really great cover. I believe that's Paul Cezanne that painted this. I'm not sure if that's Paul Cezanne himself. I really just love how he painted the beard. It just looks like he maybe spent 5 or 10 minutes on it. So super cool. That's going to be really great to get into. Up next, we have The Prince and Other Writings by Niccolo Machiavelli. I'm sorry. Really beautiful, perfect Renaissance portrait. Nice Renaissance green there. This is sort of like proto Robert Greene type stuff. You know, Robert Greene was definitely inspired with the 48 Laws of Power and the Art of Seduction and stuff by people like Niccolo Machiavelli. So this isn't too tough of a read, at least lengthwise. I think intellectually it's sort of like in the vein of philosophical Renaissance foreign policy and politics and stuff like that. So we will be getting into that eventually. Up next, we have My Antonia by Willa Cather. Heard really good things about this. And I really like sort of the muted color palette on this edition. It's just sort of a washed out painting. Not washed out per se, but just very muted colors. And they accompany that very well with sort of the muted green. It's almost a gray. Not sure how it's picking up on camera there, but this is also another woman author writing about female protagonists and stuff like that. So we will, maybe she'll be on the list as well. I got a ton of female authors, not even just in this collection, but just in general, that we are trying to cipher through as we get into the next 5 or 6 months of our reading. I'm going to be reading some women authors. So lastly but not least, we have this really nice edition of Treasure Island, and it's pretty simple. It's right to the point. It looks beautiful. Dark red with a skull and crossbones pirate flag. You know, what better cover could you imagine for Treasure Island? Now, I have read Treasure Island in the past, but it's been years. And what's really nice about some of these Barnes & Noble's Classics edition is that they actually have illustrations from the original pressings and stuff like that. Not all of them. Now, all of these Barnes & Noble's Classics, they all have, you know, endnotes and introductions and prologues and epilogues and all that good stuff, references. You know, they document most of their entire other, you know, releases and stuff like that. So hope you guys did enjoy this. I hope this inspires you to collect books, and specifically, more specifically, to collect certain editions, certain pressings, certain, you know, sort of versions, certain collections of books. That's what really makes book collecting beautiful. Now, I will keep the camera rolling, and we'll just kind of put these books back where they go. And I'll just kind of show you what they look like. They just look so great all together. So that's kind of the value of them. Eventually, they're all going to be, you know, have annotation, sticky notes sticking out of them and all that stuff. But in the meantime, they're just kind of sitting as they are. Like I said, I try to put them relatively from smallest to largest. That's just kind of the way I like to organize them. They're just so beautiful. Look at all these beautiful books. Obviously, with Henry James, I'm keeping the two Henry James together. Move the camera a little bit closer. So we're almost done here. Got our beautiful Anna Karenina right here. Put that back. Got our beautiful, I feel like I'm running out of room. I think I just got just enough room for these last two right here. And there you have it. So that is going to be a struggle if I decide to get, or if I just happen to acquire more Barnes & Noble's Classics. We're going to have to start another shelf just for Barnes & Noble's Classics. Now, as far as the Barnes & Noble's books are concerned, They do have other sort of versions. These are also pressed by Barnes and Nobles, but they're not in the Barnes and Nobles Classics collection, but you can kind of see how they're kind of in the same vein, but they sort of have a totally different layout. This is Friedrich Nietzsche. Just says Barnes and Nobles, but it doesn't really say Barnes and Nobles Classics. Let me just make sure that these are not, yeah, these are not Barnes and Nobles Classics. It's a different series. I think it's called the Barnes and Noble Library of Essential Reading, so it's a little bit of a different pressing, but nonetheless, just really cool to sort of keep those things on your radar. You know, you'll know what to expect if you kind of memorize who's publishing your books and stuff. I thought there was another version somewhere too of a Barnes and Nobles, but I can't seem to find it at the moment. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.